What if I told you some of the best-looking watches under $300 aren't the ones most people talk about? Because everyone already knows the obvious choices. But once you go a little deeper into the watch world, you start finding watches that genuinely don't make sense for the money. Some come from well-known brands, others are completely underrated, but all of them have something in common. They look, feel, and wear like watches that should cost way more than they actually do. So the real question is, can you actually get a watch under $300 that feels premium, well-built, and genuinely worth wearing long-term? Yeah. And in this video, I'm showing you 7 watches that prove it. Let's start with one that almost looks too good for its price. At first glance, this doesn't even look like a sub-$300 watch. The Martin SN0144 has the kind of finishing and overall presence you'd normally expect from watches that cost significantly more, and that's exactly why it's become so popular among watch enthusiasts recently. The first thing that stands out is the case quality. The sharp edges, brushed surfaces, and polished details are executed surprisingly well for this price range. Even small things like the bezel action and bracelet feel much more refined than most people expect when they hear the price. The dial is another strong point. Clean layout, strong lume, and a balanced design that gives the watch a very premium tool watch aesthetic without feeling cheap or overdone. And once light hits the case and bezel, the watch starts looking far more expensive than it actually is. You also get features that usually appear on more expensive watches, including a sapphire crystal, solid automatic movement, screw-down crown, and strong water resistance, making it feel like a serious everyday watch rather than just something made to look good online. On the wrist, it feels solid and well-balanced, with a weight that gives it a more premium presence without becoming uncomfortable, and that's rare at this level. What makes this watch really interesting is the value it offers, because instead of focusing only on one thing, it manages to deliver finishing, specs, and overall quality together in a way that honestly feels difficult to justify for the price. And then you realize this watch costs around $250 to $300 depending on the version, which honestly makes it one of the strongest value watches on this entire list. This is probably one of the easiest watches to mistake for something expensive. The Seiko Presage Cocktail Time has a dial that completely changes depending on the lighting, and honestly, that's what makes the watch feel so special on the wrist. The inspiration comes from Japanese cocktail bars, and you can actually see that influence in the way the dial reflects light. The texture, the sunburst effect, and the polished markers give the watch a much more refined look than most people expect from a Seiko at this price. The case is clean and elegant, with curved lugs and polished surfaces that make it wear more like a dress watch than an affordable everyday piece. And despite the classy design, it still feels versatile enough to wear casually too. Inside, it uses a Seiko automatic movement, giving you that smooth, mechanical feel instead of a quartz battery-powered experience. You also get a transparent case back, which lets you see the movement working, adding even more character to the watch. Even the way the hands and markers catch light gives the watch more depth throughout the day, especially in natural lighting. What makes it impressive is the amount of detail Seiko put into the dial and finishing without pushing the price too high. Because visually, this feels closer to watches that cost several times more. And then you look at the price, usually around $300 or even less depending on the model, which honestly feels difficult to believe once you see the watch in person. This is one of those watches that completely changes your expectations once you see it in person. The Cronos L6029 has a level of finishing and detail that honestly feels difficult to explain at this price point, especially for a brand that still isn't widely known outside the watch community. The first thing you notice is how sharp and clean the case finishing looks. The brushed surfaces, polished edges, and overall proportions give the watch a much more premium appearance than most people expect from a sub-$300 piece. The dial also plays a huge role here. Strong lume, applied markers, and a clean layout make the watch feel refined without becoming overly flashy. And once light hits the case and bracelet, it starts giving off the kind of luxury sports watch vibe usually associated with much more expensive brands. You also get features that add real value, including a sapphire crystal, ceramic bezel, screw-down crown, and automatic movement, which is impressive considering the price range this watch competes in. On the wrist, it feels solid and well-balanced, with a bracelet that feels much better than what people usually expect at this level. And that's what makes this watch interesting, because instead of cutting corners everywhere to stay affordable, it focuses on delivering the details that actually change how a watch feels in daily wear. And once you realize it costs around $250 to $300, the value starts feeling almost ridiculous for what you're getting. This is the kind of watch that proves you don't need to spend huge money to get a serious dive watch. The Citizen Promaster diver has been respected for years because it focuses on reliability, practicality, and real-world durability instead of just trying to look expensive. The design is bold and functional, with large hands, strong lume, and a bezel that's easy to grip and use. Everything about it feels purpose-built, which gives the watch a much more professional presence on the wrist than most people expect at this price. One of the biggest advantages here is Citizen's EcoDrive technology. The watch is powered by light, so you don't need battery changes, and that makes it incredibly convenient for long-term, everyday use. You also get 200 meters of water resistance, a screw-down crown, and ISO-certified dive watch standards, meaning this is a real diver, not just a watch inspired by dive watch styling. The case feels solid and durable on the wrist, and despite the sporty design, it still manages to look clean enough for daily wear outside the water too. And once you wear it for a while, the comfort and simplicity of the watch become a big part of why people keep recommending it. And that's what makes this watch such a strong value, because instead of focusing only on looks, it gives you reliability, functionality, and durability in a package that honestly feels worth much more than the price, especially when you realize many versions can still be found for around $250 to $300. This is probably one of the biggest surprises in modern watches. The G-Shock GA2100 became popular because people realized it didn't look like a normal G-Shock at all. The slim case, octagonal bezel, and clean layout gave it a design that instantly felt more modern and more expensive than its actual price. A lot of people even started calling it the Casio because of the resemblance to much more expensive luxury sports watches. But what makes it impressive is that it still keeps the core G-Shock identity underneath that cleaner design. The watch is lightweight, extremely comfortable, and built with Casio's carbon core guard structure, which helps make it durable without feeling bulky on the wrist. And unlike many oversized G-Shocks, this one works with almost anything: casual outfits, daily wear, and even slightly dressier situations. You also get the classic G-Shock toughness, including shock resistance, 200 meters of water resistance, world time stopwatch functions, and long battery life, making it far more practical than most watches in this range. The dial design is another reason people love it. The analog-digital layout stays clean and readable without looking overloaded, and the thin case profile makes the watch wear much better than most expect. And that's what makes the GA2100 such a strong value. Because for around $100 to $150, you're getting a watch that feels modern, durable, stylish, and honestly far more premium than the price suggests. At this point, the Tissot PRX has become one of the most recognizable affordable watches on the market, and honestly, once you wear it, it's easy to understand why. This is one of those watches that instantly feels more expensive than the price suggests, especially because of the way the case and bracelet are designed. The integrated bracelet is a huge part of the appeal. The way it flows directly into the case gives the watch a much more premium sports watch look, something usually associated with luxury Swiss brands that cost significantly more. The finishing also plays a big role here. The brushed surfaces, polished edges, and sharp case lines make the watch feel refined without trying too hard. And despite the relatively simple dial design, the overall proportions are so clean that the watch immediately stands out on the wrist. This version uses a quartz movement, which actually makes a lot of sense here. It keeps the watch thinner, lighter, and extremely practical for daily wear, while still maintaining the same PRX design people love. The case size, around 40 millimeters, gives it a modern but balanced fit, and the slim profile makes it wear comfortably for long periods without feeling bulky. And that's really what makes the PRX such a strong value. Because even though it's one of the more well-known watches on this list, it still delivers a level of design and wrist presence that genuinely feels far above its price range, especially when you realize you can still find it for around $300. And honestly, this might be the watch on the list that surprises people the most, because the Orient Bambino doesn't try to impress you with flashy specs or aggressive design. It does the opposite. It keeps things simple, elegant, and classic, and somehow that makes it feel even more expensive. The first thing you notice is the dial. Clean markers, polished hands, and a domed crystal that gives the watch a vintage-inspired look almost immediately. Depending on the lighting, the dial has a softness and depth that you normally expect from much more expensive dress watches. The case design also plays a huge role. Slim lugs, polished surfaces, and balanced proportions make the watch sit beautifully on the wrist without feeling oversized or bulky. It has that timeless style that works almost anywhere. Inside, it uses an Orient automatic movement, which adds even more value because you're getting a real mechanical watch experience instead of a simple quartz movement at this price. And that's what made the Bambino so respected in the watch community over the years. It's one of those rare affordable watches that actually feels designed with intention rather than just built to be cheap. It doesn't scream for attention, it doesn't need hype, and it doesn't try too hard to look luxurious. But once it's on the wrist, it genuinely feels like a watch that should cost much more than it actually does, especially when you realize you can still get one for around $200 to $300, which honestly makes the Bambino one of the strongest affordable dress watches you can buy right now. And honestly, that's what this entire list proves. Some of the best watches under $300 aren't necessarily the most famous ones. They're the watches that completely surprise you once you actually wear them. But anyway, that's it for today's video. Let me know which watch was your favorite, and I'll see you in the next one with more watches, more underrated picks, and even crazier value finds.